I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Tracie Harris.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
We're so glad you could join us today. Oh, screw all that. We're live like normal. Today is Sunday, August 17th, 2008. Thanks to everybody who's joining and watching us live, and those of you who are listening to the podcast or watching it on Google Video, welcome. We've been getting tons and tons of email. It's started to slow down a little bit again, which is actually good because I got way behind. And apologies to those people who sent things in that didn't get answers and needed them. I sent out basically a mass mailing to everybody who was in my Answer These folder and said, I'm just so far behind. If you really want an answer, send it again. And some people did, and I hope nobody took offense. It's completely my fault that I got so sidetracked on it. But we're live, as I mentioned. It's a public access call-in program. We'll have the telephone number for you shortly. We're sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. The ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, beginning at around 11:30, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center at 9th and Guadalupe, beginning at 12:15. The September lecture is going to be Oak DeBerg, who's a retired colonel, talking to us a little bit about religion and atheism in the military. He's lectured to us before at the 10th anniversary celebration of Ventana del Sol. It was so enjoyable, we wanted to have him back, so we're all looking forward to that. There's more information at the ACA website, which was at the bottom of your screen and will be again. It's www.atheist-community.org. If you want to talk to the show, you can call in when the number's up on your screen, as long as you're watching live. If you're watching a rerun, don't call in. We're live Sundays from 3 to 4:30. If you call in when we're not on, you're liable to get somebody else's program, and we don't want to annoy anybody else. You can also email tv@atheist-community.org. That goes to myself, the co-host, some of the people behind the scenes. While I was behind, some people picked up slack, and while we can't promise to answer every email, we do read all of them. So any feedback, criticisms, questions, concerns, show suggestions. We've gotten a lot of show suggestions in the last couple of weeks, and I appreciate that. I can't promise that we'll get to your particular show topic. It's pretty much up to the co-hosts as to what they want to do, but we'll see about it in the future. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits. That's PROPHETS. You can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information about how to connect to the show live and how to connect to the chat service that we run in conjunction with the show to talk to the other people who are listening to it live. It's available as a podcast if you don't catch it live as well, as is the audio portion from this program. The video is available at Google Video. In addition to the ACA website, which we'll link to all the rest of them, you can also go to atheist-experience.com, which is up on your screen now. On the left-hand side of the web page there's a link to the archive, and if you scroll down, you can see an archive of the most recent shows, and there's also a link there that you can use to expand that to show the entire 11-year history of the show, many of which are up on Google Video, but there are some that are evidently lost. Early on in the show, I guess, we lost some recordings. I know Joe Zemecki, the Texas director for American Atheists, posted some of them from when he was doing the show on YouTube. So there's a slightly different resource.
Those are the apocryphal shows anyway. So
yes, that's the Old Testament of the Atheist Experience. This is the New Testament, and you'll be happy to know that as far as I'm concerned, we've barely cracked into Matthew. So. Come on! All right. So there's a lot of stuff that the ACA does. In addition to these programs, we have a number of social events and outings. This past Friday, we went and played miniature golf at Peter Pan, and I won't mention any scores because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But we had a fun time and went out to dinner afterwards. Coming up on September 6th, we're having a garage sale. All ACA members or anybody who'd like to donate items for sale, the proceeds are going to go to ACA. You can visit the website for more information about that. September 20th is the Bat Cruise. We've booked the big boat. We need people to sign up, and we have quite a few people signed up and paid ahead of time. There's more information at the website. If you'd like to come down and participate, if you're in the Austin area, great. If you're outside of the Austin area, depending on how far you are, it's probably worth the trip. We have a good time. It's a double-decker boat. You get to see the bats, drink a little, chat with some people, just generally kick back and have an enjoyable evening. September 27th, which is the Saturday following the Bat Cruise, we're going to be taking a trip to San Antonio to go to the zoo. I think there's information up on the website about that now. If not, there will be soon. So we're looking forward to that. Plenty of other events coming up in the near future, possibly another pub crawl, possibly, well, I don't want to talk too much about what we may or may not do. As always, it's a volunteer organization, and we, all of our events, for the most part, are open to members or non-members. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us for these events, as long as you're not coming down to preach, proselytize, provoke, punch, pick on, pester. We're fine with that. Being a volunteer organization, we tend to favor whatever events members want to do. So when we have people who want to do more family fun type things, whether we're going to play miniature golf or the zoo, we'll do that. All we ask is that people make suggestions and help arrange it and help promote it, and we'll go do it. I don't care if it's 3 people going to the movies or 75 people jumping on a boat to look at bats. We just want to have the type of organization where people feel welcome and that we're doing things that people are interested in doing. In addition to those events, we have a happy hour every Thursday at the Dog and Duck Pub, beginning around 7 o'clock. That's at 17th and Guadalupe. And after this program's over, we go out to dinner. We're currently going to Threadgill's on Riverside. This show's on until 4:30. We'll be at Threadgill's around 5 o'clock or so, usually stay till 7. So if you'd like to have a meal, have a drink, come down and visit, feel free to do so. I think I got all the announcements out of the way. It's taking longer again. I'm going to have to shorten those up. Okay. So welcome, Tracie, back.
Hey.
Hey. Woo. We got tons of suggestions for show stuff. There's people asking, hey, would you cover consciousness, and there's some questions about scientific method and things like that. So what are we actually going to talk about today?
Today I wanted to address a dialogue that I had that kind of clued me into how some people are viewing science. That initially when I had this dialogue, I made an assumption about the error that the person was making, and then later I saw someone else's evaluation of it, and I realized that I think they nailed it a little better. And it's one of those things where there's the idea that if a person talks to me, they're giving me information about themselves. They're telling me what they think about something and how they view it. And so when I was looking at their response, I was taking it as sort of this is how I'm viewing what you're saying. But what they were actually doing was giving me a reflection of how they viewed how I was viewing it. And I was misinterpreting that as simply how they viewed it. It was just an interesting exchange, and I wanted to share it a little bit. The exchange itself happened on one of the forums, an atheist forum. And there was an article posted that included some content from me that dealt with evolution. And one of the responses that was given to the article was someone who wrote in and addressed it to me specifically and said that here's what Darwin had to say about me. And what they went on to give was a quote from Darwin that appears to be a quote that I would say promotes kind of a sexist view, using evolution as a reason for that. And when I read it, my response to the person was, is there some point to that? Are you unaware that people who lived in different eras have different ideas about, and it's too bad that my printout cuts out part of the margin, I didn't recognize that, but about humans. And even though the Bible explains, for example, how you ought to treat and manage your slaves, I think you likely think slavery is not a good thing, but that modern Christianity is certainly no stranger to anyone. Social views change, and beyond that, a person can hold to both correct and incorrect ideas at the same time. So what if Darwin even was as far gone as a raging pedophile? How would that invalidate whatever correct assumptions he might have made in the realm of biology? And I directed him to go look up the fallacy definition for ad hominem, because my assumption about what he posted was Darwin was a sexist, and therefore Tracie will not accept you should question the evolutionary, the content of
Right.
his statements about evolution.
He got this part wrong, so we should just dismiss the other bit.
Right, and beyond that, he chose specifically a statement about, that would be considered sexist and directed it to a woman. So in my mind, I looked at that from my personal perspective as, if Tracie sees Darwin as sexist, she will reject what Darwin had to say.
Yeah.
And my response was, I've never made a claim that, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone, I have no idea, but I've never claimed that Darwin is a good person, or that he's always right about everything, or, and to me, whether Darwin said it or someone else said it wouldn't have mattered. It's an observation.
Yeah, it kind of ties back to something we talked about before when like the question of the historicity of Jesus comes up, and people say, well, for example, Socrates may not have existed. He may have been a completely fictional invention of Plato to use as a mouthpiece.
Right.
And my point is, it doesn't matter to me whether Socrates existed or not. What matters is what he actually said.
Right.
His statements live or die on their own merits, and it
Right.
doesn't matter whether Socrates said them or George W. Bush said them. If it's true, it's true. If it's not true, it's not true.
Correct. I mean, all that matters is that we have the character, whether the character is a human being or whether the character is a character in a book. If I were to quote Hamlet,
Right.
Am I quoting Hamlet or am I quoting Shakespeare? Well, I'm quoting the character Hamlet put forward by Shakespeare. Everything Hamlet says might not be everything Shakespeare agrees with.
Right.
So, it comes in the idea that even if he's a character, he speaks on his own. Because the character, even though he might be authored by someone else,
Right,
doesn't
Plato,
necessarily express the view of the author, although in Plato's case it probably would.
No, well, not necessarily. Well, using Socrates, it probably does, or usually does.
Right.
But Plato would construct dialogues with a number of fictional speakers arguing all points of view. So clearly, what his characters
Right.
said didn't represent him. The reason, by the way, to sidetrack for half a second, the reason why it's a different case with the question of the historicity of Jesus is that what he says is intrinsically tied to who he is. If you say that you are a god, then your existence actually, comes into question.
Well, in fact, I guess you could argue that what he said is actually less important than whether or not he existed.
Yeah.
Because
That's some of it.
well, I mean, if I were, for example, a fundamentalist Christian, it really wouldn't matter what Jesus had said. If I believed that he was God and that I should do what he says, then whatever he says is going to be what I should do.
Right.
So the words of Jesus become unimportant insofar, important to the Christian, maybe in directing their life, but not
Their truth value is not important.
Right.
They are asserted as truth because,
because
of the authority.
Right. The authority is who matters and not what he said.
And that'll actually tie into kind of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well,
By the way, Darwin was a racist and a sexist.
Okay.
No surprise there. So was almost everybody Darwin knew. The concepts of equality hadn't quite triggered in.
But to be honest, even if he was uniquely horrible in those aspects, it would in no way affect any observations that he made that did pan out to be verified. Right. If something is observable and someone says it, if Darwin says, the sun arises in the morning, that doesn't change just because he might not be a nice person. Yeah. And anything else he might say that is completely wrong and completely fallacious doesn't invalidate an observation that he might make that is correct. Yeah. So even though I hit on that by saying people can hold to opinions that are both correct and incorrect, I didn't really get to it as closely as one of the other posters who said, I presumed, and I believe I presumed fairly, that his worldview incorporates some form of authoritarianism embedded in church/religious leaders or icons. After all, it seems he presumed that scientists, many but not all, considered Darwin to the same degree of infallibility as Catholics do the Pope, or as Muslims do Mohammed, or as Mormons Joseph Smith, Scientologists Ron Hubbard, etc., etc. And what I began to realize is that when he posted the comment from Darwin, what he was actually doing was telling me how he viewed me. He wasn't telling me how he viewed the issue. And so my response to him as saying, you're making an ad hominem, was almost a response that said, you're trying to say that because he said one thing that was wrong, that anything he says that is right should be disregarded. But in reality, what he was trying to communicate was that he perceives that I perceive Darwin as authoritarian. Right. So I was kind of stunned by that, because that's when I started to see, like, oh, he's not making a statement about how he views it. He's making a statement how he views that I view it. And in that regard, he's making a huge error in that he's considering that I consider it authoritarian. That the reason that I would accept any sort of evolutionary claim is because Darwin said it. Or, and I will say to a larger degree, many Christians would say, because science says it.
Right.
And my response to that is, no. That's, like we were talking about this in one of the emails, that's just wrong. If Darwin says a thing and I can observe it, it's correct. I mean, I don't even know how to get around that. If it's observable and you can see it again and again and again, and you can test it, and you can go in and make predictions with it, and the thing holds up again and again and again, I mean, I don't know how to say that the thing doesn't stand on its own. Like you said, Socrates' words stand on their own.
Yeah.
Well, the reality of there's an evolutionary reality, right? There's a reality to evolution that is observable. And whether Darwin says it, or even if you outlawed anybody saying it, it doesn't make it go away.
Right.
So the thing itself stands, whether someone says it or not. And the reason that a person, and that brought up something else that I wanted to mention, which was that I get a lot of times, let's see, the statement that, people saying, well, science is looked at as a religion, or there are people who make science their religion. And there are people who adhere to science, with a very authoritarian attitude. And I've heard this claim repeatedly. And while I can't say that I have never seen a person sort of cave to a scientific claim simply because it was a scientific claim, I have seen that. But I can certainly say that the number of people who claim that people do that is hugely, vastly larger than the number of people I've actually ever seen do that. So there's this small segment of people who think that if science puts it forward, it's unquestionable truth, whether it's hypothesis or
And oddly enough, those people aren't scientists, because one of the first things scientists realize is that there are no sacred topics. There are no unquestionable truths.
Right.
The process of science is all about repeatedly questioning those truths to expand our knowledge. And there's nothing authoritarian. People don't accept evolution, and this drives me crazy, because creationists seem to have some kind of, particularly the anti-evolution extreme creationists, folks like Ray Comfort or whatever, seem to have this idea that evolution is like some kind of global conspiracy, like Darwin popped up an idea and then some money changed hands under the table and we got it into the schools by in order to indoctrinate, and you get these scientists to agree. The reason that scientists support evolutionary theory or acknowledge the fact of evolution has nothing to do with the fact that it came from Darwin or anybody else. As a matter of fact, the evolutionary model we use today is greatly different from anything that Darwin would have actually conceived. He caught his idea, his beautiful idea was natural selection, and that has applications outside of biology as well. But the evidence for the diversity of life through this process of natural selection is supported in all of the sciences that would be relevant to it. Whether it's geology. It could have been very much the case that when we discovered DNA, we could have discovered that this made the evolutionary theory impossible. It could have been the case that we discovered that within DNA there is something that prohibits this gradual change over time of natural selection. As a matter of fact, that's not the case. We discovered something completely new, and we find in it affirmation of the theory that we've been building, and it confirms that our understanding, while not complete, was at least correct. Correct in the broader scheme, and we continually fine-tune towards a better explanation.
Yeah, and one of the things that I mentioned in the article, and this is something else that I want to put forward, is evolution is an observable mechanism. I can't imagine what it would take for a person to dispute that you cannot change, the xenotype? What's the phenotype? Phenotype of an animal, that you can't change the physical characteristics of an animal by selecting the breeding. We know that can be done. We've done it. So it's doable. We know that there is a mechanism for changing the external physical features of this animal by selecting for specific genes. And
all the features of the animal, internal, external.
yeah, when I say external, I mean it's just like we can see, we can observe.
Sure.
It is observable that you can change it. You can create a Great Dane or a Chihuahua within,
Right.
using the same starting.
And of course, the standard creationist response to that is, well, they're both dogs.
Okay, and the response to that, of course, is that we've seen evolution produce new species.
Yeah.
So evolution breaks that barrier. We've observed it break that barrier. And what happens is we have an observable mechanism, which is evolution, and we know that it can produce new species. We have never observed creationism, and creationism has never been observed to produce a new species. So when a person says to me, I think there are limits to what evolution can do, my response would be something like, maybe one day we will find a limit. But for now, there's not yet been a limit found. So what we have when a person says, I think that evolution can go this far but not this far, is a person who says, if you have a mechanism that creates a stalactite, you see that material, minerals are dripping down from water, it creates this stalactite. And we measure it and it grows, let's say, 1.5 inches per year based on that drip. And there's other stalactites around it that are 3 feet long. The person who's putting the limit down is basically saying, although we have a mechanism that we understand that produces a stalactite, we know that mineral deposits dripping from this water can produce, a growth in a stalactite. We've only measured stalactites for the last 100 years. Let's just say, I don't know how long that's been, but let's say we've started measuring them and how they grow for the last 100 years, and let's just say that we plug in that, the fastest growth we've ever seen is, 1/4 inch a year. And so these 3-foot ones, I just don't think that same mechanism can account for those. I don't think that mineral deposit in dripping water made a 3-foot stalactite. That's the same assertion. I don't think it's a fair assertion. I don't think people would make that assertion about a stalactites, and I don't know why they assert it for evolution. But you have a mechanism that can do what you need it to do in order to explain what you're looking at, and you have another mechanism that has never been observed. No one knows anything about it. No one can reproduce it. Nobody can study it. Nobody can verify it, and they've never seen it work. And yet, it's put forward, and people wonder why people don't hold creationism and evolution on par.
Yeah, and interestingly, among the young Earth creationists, they actually challenge the mechanism for the creation of stalactites and stalagmites as well, because it would require more time than the Earth has actually existed. They're on this 6,000 to 10,000 year old Earth scheme.
Yeah.
So these stalactites and stalagmites that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, kind of.
Right. And
all
all that's doing is just taking evidence that's in your face and saying that I must refuse to accept this evidence because it conflicts with what I want to believe.
And I need to rework the data in order to match my preconceptions.
Yeah. And anyway, but the thing I'm looking at is I think what I'm going to start doing is maybe pointing out that when someone says to me that people take science at face value as authoritarian, dictates of truth, I'm going to challenge them to show me someone doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that it never happens, but it certainly doesn't happen to the degree that it's dialogued about.
But even those people that do, even when they come up with examples, okay, those people are wrong. You don't.
Right. Right, but that's not saying...
They may have the correct answer for the wrong reasons. That's entirely possible.
And that's part of my point, is that, does the number of people who make this error merit the amount of dialogue that it gets and the chastisement that is laid down for it? And I don't believe that it does.
Well, I think there's a significant chunk of the population that would just accept basically scientific pronouncements. But I think there's a completely different reason for this. As a matter of practicality, we could not individually go and investigate and come to a complete and accurate understanding of all the knowledge that humans have acquired. So we have to rely on authorities. If I talk to Mark, a physicist, and he gives me an explanation of something, I'm going to generally accept his explanation, especially if it's one that I don't understand, which happens quite a few times. I'm going to accept that he got it right. But the thing is that my acceptance of that is tentative. If some other physicist comes up and explains why Mark got it wrong, now I've got a conflict, and then I have to begin evaluating which of these experts is more reliable. And I can't just go with my gut and say, that one sounds better to me, because I'm not an expert in it at all. So the only solution at that point is to go out and investigate. And this is one of the reasons why we end up relying on consensus science. And as long as we're all doing this with the understanding that all scientific findings are tentative, that new evidence always leads us to reevaluate these things and possibly come up with new theories, new models that completely overturn old ones. Although I have to say that as we progress, the likelihood of overturning long-established scientific models begins to decrease dramatically. It's not like we are likely to find new evidence that our understanding of gravity is completely wrong. We may learn more about it. As we begin to investigate, the macro world and the micro world, and where those formula break down, and where our understanding breaks down, we would be learning more about it. But it's not like we're not likely to discover that angels actually hold your feet to the ground and push objects around in space, and we assign different numbers of angels based on the mass of the object, and that's why it looks like mass is relevant to gravity, but it's really not. I mean, it's absurd in the extreme to think that we would ever discover that we were that wrong. We have a sufficient basic understanding that we build from, that those kind of world-turning or world-overturning discoveries are just not likely to happen.
Right. One of the things that I had, that I'm glad I just read it because it reminded me, part of what made me want to talk about this was a dialogue that I had in person with a theist who looked at a statement in the paper that had to do with the findings from the Mars rover. Mm-hmm. And there was something in the paper that talked about one of the findings and what it implicated. And then there was, very quickly after that, there was something else had gotten analyzed, and it turned that over. So it was like, well, we thought this, but then we got further analysis, and now we see that can't be. And he was very upset when he was talking to me, and he was just like, well, now they're saying it's completely different. Like, first it was this, and now they're saying it's the total opposite of that, like just within a couple days. And I said, yes, that's because science adjusts to fit evidence and data. So if you get new data that conflicts, and that shows you that it's not what you thought it was, you have to own up to that and say it's not what I thought it was. And one of the things I said to him was, when you tell me something, when you make a claim, when you say to me anything, doesn't that come with an understanding that it's based on everything you know?
Yeah.
And so what I wrote was, scientists speak with an asterisk beside every statement that footnotes this: based on the best and most current data available. This is no different than the same asterisk that any one of us would use in every statement of fact we would make to anyone in our lives. It is unreasonable to assume a statement from a researcher would come without such a caveat.
Yeah, and this is the underlying problem here is when we say all the time, because I can't count the number of times somebody with a religious mindset, a religious worldview, is written in to say, well, science gets it wrong all the time. How can you rely on anything science says? It's constantly changing. Holy cow, they can say one thing and then later on they learn something new and say another. So there's no good reason to rely on science at all. Oh, please. Have you ever been to a doctor? Do you eat food? Do you watch the TV show? Do you have glasses?
Computer.
Are you aware that we sent people to the moon?
iPod.
Do you have a computer? I mean, all these amenities, that's science in action. There is good reason to rely on the findings of science. The problem here is not science, it's you. You're expecting firm, true, authoritative answers, because that's what religion offers. Religion is unchanging. It says God did it and that's all we ever need to know. It inhibits investigation. It can't change. Most of them are completely immune from change, and in fact you're forced to ignore or rationalize away evidence that would conflict with a religious worldview. This this intense curiosity that we have, this uncomfortable feeling we have with not knowing, this desire to have answers, I understand it. It drives all of us. It's what drives scientists. Scientists are ever trying to approach that truth. But we've come to understand that because of our failings and our limited knowledge and the fact that we're fledglings at this, that all of our discoveries are tentative. There aren't absolute truths. But religion feeds you this idea and builds up a mindset where you're expecting to get answers, because that's what religion pretends to give you. When in fact, most religions, at least as far as I can tell, don't actually offer real answers at all. They offer non-answers. Where did the universe come from? Well, God created it. Well, you haven't told me a thing, because you cannot describe any mechanism for this. You cannot even possibly come to a description of God. In fact, you might say that God is beyond our ken completely, that we can't even understand it. So you haven't offered me an explanation. What you have offered me is a stopgap, a way of preventing me from asking future questions, a way of inhibiting investigation and progress. I mean, that's just the way religion ends up working.
Right, because it fosters a huge level of discomfort with the honest answer, I don't know.
Yeah.
That is so
tough.
Unacceptable to so many fundamentalists. It's unbelievable how uncomfortable they are with an I don't know answer. And they will give you an answer that is incorrect, and you say, you're trying to explain to them, we don't know. I don't know, and you don't know. And that answer that you're providing is not an answer.
I don't know is so uncomfortable that this answer feels good is preferable.
Yeah, I would rather say fairies make the flowers bloom than admit I don't know why flowers bloom. And it's like, well, but if you're saying the fairies make the flowers bloom and they don't, then you still don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not knowledge. It's just a patch to make you feel better, like you actually do know something that you don't. But they prefer that, and it's like they almost attack the response, I don't know. You'll say, I don't know, and they will say, oh, see, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
don't know.
I might
why
be right.
Is that a problem?
And on that note, we had a couple people holding for a little bit. I wanted to go ahead and take a couple calls. Is it James? Hello, James?
Uh-oh.
Oh, hi.
Hey.
How you doing?
You might want to turn off your TV. There's like a slight delay, and then just listen to the phone.
Okay.
So do you have a question?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. I wanted to say hello to you and Tracie,
Hi.
and I just wanted to know that I just had a question for you.
Okay, ask away.
Why did you say that God is just some character in a book?
Actually, I didn't say that.
Hello?
Yeah, actually, I didn't say that.
You didn't?
No.
Because when I was watching your show, you did say that, or Tracie, I don't know, but said that Jesus is just some character in a book.
We were talking about Socrates.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And what I mentioned was the question of the historicity of Jesus as to whether or not he actually existed. I didn't say he was a character in a book because I have no idea if he was or not. Maybe he existed, maybe he didn't. The jury is pretty much out. I'm okay with accepting, from a general point of view, that some person existed that may be the center of the biblical stories and myths. But there's this complex question about, what do you mean when you say Jesus? If you mean there's this guy who is the Son of God, who walked on water, raised the dead, cured the sick, was killed and resurrected and ascended bodily to heaven, I don't think that person exists at all, and I don't think that there's evidence for it. If you say that Jesus was this itinerant rabbi who preached love and peace and stories grew up around it, okay, maybe that person exists, but it doesn't really matter much. My point is that the people who assert that Jesus is a historical fact, along the lines of George Washington or Julius Caesar or anybody else, they're overstating the case. But that wasn't really what
I was going to say that actually wasn't even the point. The point was simply that in the context of why Jesus is important, it is more important that he existed than what he said, as opposed to other characters in antiquity whose existence is in question, whether it's barely in question or greatly in question. What mainly matters with those characters is what they said and not whether or not they existed. And with Jesus, it's
My
sort of
point
alternated.
would be that you guys are refusing to accept that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior.
Correct.
You're correct. I'm refusing to accept that.
But instead, you think he's just some fairy tale with fairies. Well, I'm not trying to be offensive at any cost.
Not at all.
I'm not
I
offended.
do respect you guys.
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't assert that it was that Jesus was a fairy tale. I would, in my opinion, the biblical stories, especially the ones that involve supernatural stuff, are the rough equivalent of fairy tales and myths. And until somebody demonstrates otherwise, I think that's the most reasonable conclusion. As a matter of fact, the justification for this probably is if you are a believer who believes in Jesus and the stories in the Bible, and you don't think that they're
no
myth.
offense, man, but I really like you. You're a great guy.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, he's not
But
offended.
my point still stands.
I'm actually answering that.
Still refuse Jesus as your Lord and Savior. That you reject him by calling him some sort of character or a fairy tale. And he
Right.
does exist in the nature.
How do you know this?
But yet you still won't.
What makes you believe that Jesus still exists?
Because he's still there. He's in your heart. He's
What makes you think that?
Those signs that really helps you out in your life.
What makes you think
He's a
that?
spiritual guidance.
What makes you think this?
He's a spiritual guidance that needs
What's that mean?
a whole lot of help.
How do you justify that statement?
Why do I justify
No, how?
that he's still around is because look at the nature of everything. Look at the trees, the flowers,
Okay.
everything.
How is that proof of Jesus?
Because Jesus is God.
And what's your justification for that statement?
Because he was dead once.
How do you
and
know?
resurrected to heaven
How do you know this?
on the throne.
You're not going to get an answer.
How do you know that he died and was resurrected?
Because in the Bible,
There we go.
stated
So how do you know that the Bible is true?
Because the Bible is a geographical evidence and proof
Okay,
of what
look up
happened during that
geography
time
first of all.
period.
You need to look up geography, first of all, because the Bible isn't geographical evidence of anything.
Because if you go up to Jerusalem yourself,
Right.
What about the
So when I pick up a Spider-Man comic, when I pick up a Spider-Man comic and it talks about New York, when I go to New York, is that proof that Spider-Man exists?
Or the Quran? If the
Oh,
Quran
you
talks
believe
about
that Madalyn O'Hair is just some fraud?
What's Madalyn O'Hair have to do with this?
Because I know that your show that you represent is Madalyn O'Hair's commentary and protectors of all the lies and
I think we're over the rainbow.
wrongdoing that you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Over the rainbow.
Oh, shut up, Tracy.
Oh,
We
okay.
are.
See, I would have actually let you get one more inane comment out because there are some people who appreciate the calls where somebody can't make a point or can't think straight enough to actually support what they. I'm fine with you believing whatever it is that you believe. I wish you could clearly express why, but for all I know, you may have been a prank call just wanting to lead us down to your,
15 minutes.
ridiculous statements. What Madalyn O'Hair? How do we get there? Oh yeah, she started in Austin and used to have a TV show. So what? I just sometimes I don't get it. For those of you who think we let him go on too long, well, I apologize. Robert, you there?
Yeah, I can barely hear you though.
Thanks for holding.
Let me turn this off speakerphone, just a moment.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Take us
Okay,
off
is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, and make sure you turn down your TV. But thanks for waiting.
Okay, yeah, no problem. First of all, that previous call, when you mentioned O'Hare, I almost spit out my drink. That was pretty funny. If it was
Thank
a crank,
you.
that was hilarious.
Okay.
But what he said about the Bible, pretty interesting, think that, like, you're familiar with the Jefferson Bible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, he took all the parts that were important and took out the ghost stories, I think that was a great accomplishment on his part. Well,
I think it was a good start.
I had a question regarding your opinion on infinite regress.
What about it?
Or do you think it's, reasonably possible? Do you think an infinite regress of causes is possible?
We've talked about this before.
Oh, yeah? I've only seen your stuff on YouTube, honestly.
Yeah, there's like 11 years of shows you can actually go watch. We talk about the same thing almost every week. So we're talking about a causal chain.
Yeah.
Sagan came up with an answer that I've really kind of admired, where someone was making this argument against an infinite regress and saying, at this point we must stop, lest we stop asking what came before this. And Sagan's response was basically, so why stop asking? I don't know. Obviously you can mathematically demonstrate the problems and the paradoxes that come up when you're talking about infinities. I don't even bother really worrying about it. It may be the case mathematically or in reality that an infinite regress is possible, although we're going to get to some kind of state change at the event horizon. My thing is that when we get back to the Planck time, we can't say anything about what came before. We can't, with any reasonable authority or assurance, make any statement. Perhaps where we've got a number of universal models where you've got I guess it's pseudo steady state universe where you have a singularity that existed forever, and then.
But in the case of that, it would have some kind of catalyst. Otherwise, why didn't it happen sooner?
It doesn't necessarily need an external catalyst, though.
Well, if the catalyst was in and of itself, then it should have happened sooner, right?
What's sooner? I mean...
Yeah, what does that mean?
Like, throughout time. Like, if it existed, back before the Big Bang, there must have been some kind of change to make it happen.
Right.
And, if there was, you can't have change without a cause.
According to the laws of this universe, yes.
Yeah.
But
right, that's exactly my point. If you go outside the laws of this universe... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that the idea of prior to Planck time cuts off at the knees everything we know. So we can't make any statements of knowledge based on what we know about this universe that apply to prior to this universe. What we know breaks down.
All right, yeah. Well, my point kind of is that at that point in the far past where we're not exactly sure what's happening, we can pretty much agree that something happened, right?
Oh,
just
whether it be the Big Bang or what have you.
Something happened, and instead of this universe, I usually say the current state of the universe.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Because the Big Bang model, as I understand it, is that it's not like the. Well, anyway, let's get off that. I'll let you finish or continue.
Oh, well, it's not going to be much. I was just for a while now I've been, I guess you could call it a Spinozan. I think his explanation of substance monism is pretty much the most coherent theology/metaphysic that's ever been presented. And in my opinion, he got it right. You can call whatever you like. You can call it nature, you can call it God, you can call it the Big Bang. But there is a first cause if you don't accept infinite regress. And I just think that it meshes very well with opinions about evolution and such, given that basically there are natural properties and things happen.
Yeah, and one of the models, and I use this kind of as an example. This isn't necessarily what I accept. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure that I accept anything. I'm not sufficiently versed in the broader aspects of astrophysics to really say, well, this is the model that I prefer and think's right, especially when the scientists aren't necessarily coming to any agreement. You had originally the idea of a steady state universe, and then you had the universe expanding, and then there were claims of the universe contracting, and then there's the possibility the universe is cyclical, that it expands out and then compresses on itself. And this model, by the way, may actually provide an infinite series with no external cause, because after the collapse, you would reach a state where It's all self-contained, including the energy needed to cause an expansion.
Right, but at the same time, you still have an infinite regress, and the thing
Right.
is,
In the broader
I kind of
cycle.
feel it's kind of a fallacy, but the fact that, Aristotle, since his time, people have been trying to disprove, or rather prove the possibility of an infinite regress, and they hadn't been able to for 2,300 years. And, I kind of respect Aristotle as both, a figure and, like an intellect unto himself. So, that's kind of my own prejudice working in there.
Yeah, but I don't want to get off on big long discussions about infinity again. In short, my answer is I don't know.
That's actually a good answer. Actually, that's a very good answer.
But I do know this: the people who would assert, even if they're correct, that there must have been some cause, some first cause, to assert anything at all about that first cause beyond its requirement is absurd. To apply any characteristics to it, and definitely to say that it's this transcendent intelligence that created everything and cares about us and wants you to, stop masturbating, that's just silly.
Yeah, certainly.
But
well, thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too.
I want to say one thing. There's nothing about my stuff. No, I just wanted to add one thing. We got a letter that I just wanted to share. Someone goes by the name of Rage, wrote in and said that he likes us together as a team on the show because we're like peanut butter and chocolate.
Really? I didn't get that letter.
Yeah.
And I don't really like Reese's Pieces that much, or Reese's.
Yeah, I did. I wrote him back and I said that was my favorite candy as a child, so.
That was sweet.
Yeah, I was expecting jelly, and then I saw chocolate, and I was like, just like he knows me.
See, we can't even get along on what candy we like. You were wrong.
Anyway,
I
just said thanks for that, Rage.
Let's. I know you got more, but
no, I don't. I have other stuff I can talk about, but it's not.
Okay, so we'll get the lines open. And by the way, as a reminder for anybody who wants to, we go to dinner after the program's over. We'll be down there around 5 o'clock. Thread Gills on Riverside. I'm sure they'll put it up right there. There it is. There's the information. Reuben, you're on the air. Thread Gills on Riverside. I'm sure they'll put it up right there. Hey, I can hear the delay. There's the information. Reuben, you're on the air.
How you doing?
Good, Reuben. I need you to turn down your TV.
Hello?
Yeah, I need you to turn down your TV and ignore it and pay attention to the phone because there's a delay. And can we start making sure people know that when they call in? Turn down your TV and ignore it and pay attention to the phone because there's a delay. And can we I can hear the echo. How you doing, Reuben?
All right, how about you?
I'm good.
How you guys doing?
Good.
I'm good. I need you to turn down your TV.
I'm good. Yeah,
I'm good. You turn down your TV.
I got a question for y'all.
Okay, go. Could you turn down your TV?
Some more?
Just ignore the TV, pay attention to the phone. What do you got?
There it goes.
Good. No more echo.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's
Sure,
okay.
sure. What's your question?
Yeah, a while ago you stated that there wasn't a person that existed.
Go on.
Named Jesus.
No.
How about Pontius Pilate, George Washington, and Napoleon Bonaparte?
I didn't say there was no person named Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say that.
Or the things that he did.
Okay, now we got something. The miracles.
Could you let's just try to be clear. What exactly are you asking?
I wanted to ask you, how can you explain to me, you and your host, why, do you know how many species are on the face of this planet?
Oh, it's you, Reuben. This is the question you asked us years ago.
Yeah, several years ago. I haven't gotten any answers from anybody.
Well, the answer is we don't know. We know of millions of species, but we don't know all of the species on the planet.
In fact, there might be Bigfoot now.
it was other hosts that I asked the questions to, and I haven't gotten any answers. And
Right.
I was just calling see maybe both of you got a a question. I mean, an answer pretty close to or a reason
I don't even know.
or
what
an
the question is.
explanation.
I guess I'm confused on what the point is, because I just answered your question, and then that is that we know of millions of species, but we also realize that we don't know about all the species on the planet.
Yeah, but okay, and what is the closest to the human
Chimps and pigs,
species that
chimps and pigs generally share the closest.
capable of doing speaking through phones and building stuff,
apparently speaking through
technological
phones.
stuff and stuff like that.
Animals use technology, not to the extent of human beings, but yes, they do. They build things and they also use tools. Does that help?
I think we've had this conversation exactly before, so let's just go ahead and get to this answer, which is, I'll say that there are no other animals besides humans who create technology in the sense that you're talking about it. Next.
Why is that? Do you know?
Wait, can I just answer this?
Yes.
How is that different than asking which animal has a longer neck than a giraffe? Is that significant to you?
Yeah, well, in regards, there's different animals on the face of this planet. I mean,
Yes, but what
they're not
has a
all
longer
gonna be
neck than a
alike.
giraffe? What animal has a longer neck than a giraffe?
A snake, probably.
I guess if you can, I know because there's no snakes. I don't know if there is a snake that is.
Yeah, there may be an anaconda. There might be a. It's not a neck. They don't have a
It
neck.
depends where the rest of the body ends. Or
Anyway,
stuff.
none of that makes
But the
any
point
difference.
is, just because an animal has, asserts a certain characteristic that is beyond the other animals, like a cheetah being the fastest,
Whales being
why
big.
is that significant that animals excel at different things, including people?
Well, I just wanted to know, or maybe get an answer in regards to the technological capability differences that there is between humans and the rest of creation.
Come on now, you're not going to make me believe, especially since we've had this exact conversation a year and a half ago, that you don't
Yes,
already
and I'm
understand
still,
that you don't already.
Wondering why.
Oh my God! Can I finish?
Yeah.
You're not going to make me believe that you don't understand that humans are the only ones that have developed technology in the sense that you're talking about. So could you just make your actual point? You don't have to lead me down the primrose path.
Yeah, but that's the actual deal that I'm struggling with.
No other
Why-
animals on the planet are as technologically advanced as humans. So
But
what?
why not? I mean,
So what?
You got animals that run real fast. The cheetah, the rabbit,
And some of them run faster than
lion.
any other animal, so what does that mean about them?
Yeah, but why the vast difference between humans and the rest of
Why the
creation?
vast difference between a cheetah running and me running?
Why is a whale so different from an amoeba? Why
Unique.
is a cockroach so different from an elephant?
That's my point.
Okay.
Why is everything
And
so
then
vastly
here is your
different between
please, Reuben,
them and humans?
Stop, Reuben. Here's your answer. Because mutations occur, things change, and natural selection selects against things that, in order to eliminate them from the population, essentially, you don't get to reproduce. This process, over millions of years, creates the diversity of life. And it's because in some areas, you don't need a big brain in order to survive. What you need is the ability to run really fast. And in other areas, you don't need to be extremely strong and muscular in order to survive. What you need to be is tiny and camouflaged and hidden. That is how you get the diversity of life.
But can I just say also that, I mean, if every species wasn't unique in some way, we wouldn't be able to catalog them as separate species.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous to point out a difference in one thing and say, see, it's different than everything else. Every species is different than everything else, or else we wouldn't be able to differentiate between animals.
Okay, the animal world is besides their physical abilities, their characteristics are more or less the same. They don't have the capabilities of building stuff and
No,
stuff.
that's not
They
true.
can build things.
Why is that?
It's not
Or
true.
technology, or
Have you ever seen an anthill?
evolving into technology.
Have you seen
Why
an
is that?
atheist? Animals build things. We see things that animals build all the time around us. I have bird nests in my backyard.
Well, when are they going to? If they're evolving and stuff, and they've been around millions of years ago, when are they going to start evolving?
Okay,
When are you going to lay an egg?
this is the problem. You think that evolution is some kind of ladder with a goal, and that is not the case at all. There is no goal. There is no advancement. It's just change. There's no evolutionary state that is necessarily better than some evolutionary state. There's only the state versus the selection criteria at the time. That's it. It may turn out to be. It may turn out.
Humans, they climbed up that ladder.
Shut up. It may turn out to be the case that humans, despite our wacky, huge intellect, have actually been evolving down a path that's going to lead to our own destruction. It may not be an ultimate advantage to us to have this intellect. It may actually have been an advantage to stay in the trees and stay with smaller populations and not develop technology. You are putting a value on something because you value it, and that's fine, I value it too. But that does not have anything at all to do with the evolutionary process. There's no goal, there's no ladder, there's no higher than, there's no better than. There's only what you are and what the selection criteria is.
But even if there was a ladder, I mean, how does the fact that I can manufacture a cell phone prove God?
I don't know, and I don't know that that's necessarily what's going on. Yes? Hello? Reuben?
Hello? Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm not talking through a 4-second delay to you anymore, because I think it's 4 seconds in about 45 years.
Well, we have people on hold, too.
Yeah, and there's other people on hold. The short answer is the diversity of life is explained by natural selection and different selection criteria. There is no better. There is only what you are.
But since
and even if evolution was a ladder, that doesn't mean that everything necessarily progressed up the ladder at the same rate, at the same time, or anything else. And by the way, even if all of that was there, it doesn't have anything to do with the point that you're eventually going to get to, which is the only reason we're so clever is because God clearly made us different from the other animals. That's special pleading. You are taking those things that you value, that you see as different about yourself. You know what? The whale could say, hey, the only reason we're so much bigger than everything else is because clearly there's a God who made us better and made us to rule over the oceans. You know, why did those humans have to sit over there in the trees and then get so smart and build buildings? They could have just floated around eating plankton all the time. This is clearly the good life. We're not out to destroy ourselves. We're not out polluting the planet. We're not getting ready to blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons. Clearly, we are evolutionary superior as whales. Your argument's dumb. Sorry. There's no other way about it. Steve, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good.
Listen, which one of you is chocolate and which one of you is peanut butter?
I'm peanut butter for sure.
Okay, and I'll take chocolate.
Well, basically what I wanted to say is God is obvious and religion is suspect. And basically I've tried to figure out if the golden rule is the ultimate strategy.
Okay.
And I feel that...
Can we back up half a second?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can we back up just a little bit? When you say God is obvious but religion is suspect, I'm not quite sure I understand what you're meaning by that.
Well, for me, in my belief, I just believe in God. Okay. I believe that God exists, and...
but why? Why do you believe that?
Well, I guess it comes down to the logic. You know, what my logic teacher said is that God is all-powerful and God is all-knowing. And
why would your logic teacher make assertions like that have nothing to do with logic?
Well, that was the definition.
The definition of what?
God.
Okay.
So in a specific context, I'm assuming that they were discussing maybe someone's view of God?
Well, basically, it's you know, when somebody says, do you believe in God, I say, well, what is your definition of God?
Right, and I would too. So what's your definition?
Basically, the definition that I thought was, you know, sounded the best was, you know, God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and I think there's a couple other ones.
Sometimes there's omnibenevolent, but that conflicts with certain
Actually,
others.
omnipotence itself conflicts with itself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a logical inconsistency there. So you picked the definition of God because that's the one that you preferred, and then you also think that it's logically supported. And yet, omnipotence in and of itself is logically contradictory.
All-powerful is contradictory?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, not to toss out a tired old canard, but Carlin brought up the can God make a rock so big that even he couldn't lift it? I realize there's an equivocation fallacy in there with regard to powerful, but omnipotence implies you could possibly do something that's logically contradictory. And most new theologians have a special definition of omnipotence, which is God can do everything that's not logically impossible. In order to avoid that, but then omnipotence comes into conflict with other things like omniscience and omnibenevolence. But anyway, I'm curious as to how do you define God, and why do you believe that this God actually exists? I guess the question.
Okay. Well, basically, it's in the definition itself. You know, somebody will say something, and then I'll say, define consciousness.
Right.
And if it gets to the point where if you can't define God, if you can't define consciousness, if you can't define all-powerful, or if you have trouble and you find out that hey, this, if you look at it this way, it's one way, or if you look at it this way, it's another way. I've never come across anybody that's come across with a really good definition of God.
So I would agree.
Okay.
So, but basically, it comes down to if you believe humans are the only ones that have consciousness, or animals are the only ones that have consciousness, or can rocks have consciousness and stuff like that. Then you get back to, okay, well, we don't even have a definition of God anymore. And
I don't know that got anywhere close to explaining to me what God you believe in and why.
Well, I believe God is what is going on right now is God's purpose or God's plan. And I believe that there's only one God because there's only one way that things can unfold. And that since the beginning of time, there was only one way that, or we could say from the Big Bang, there was only one way things could unfold.
He's not understanding the question.
And if that is, if you can define consciousness on that simple of a level, then you can say, okay, God is all conscious.
Okay, I apologize because I'm definitely not understanding a damn thing you're saying. And here's the thing. First of all, we don't define things into existence. Second of all, you're talking about you believe there's a God because you believe that he has a plan.
But that doesn't tell us what
and
God
that there's only this one possible plan. Well, the first two, I don't see any justification for, apart from your wanting to believe that there's a God with a plan. But your assertion that there's only one way things could have unfolded from the time of the Big Bang is not only wrong, but if it's true, then you're an automaton with no free will and everything you do is pre-programmed.
Well, maybe free will is an illusion.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that concept.
There's no way to prove that there is such a thing as free will.
I'm fine with that concept, but I'm still trying to figure out what your justification was for the first two, that a God exists and he's got a plan, apart from one of them.
And I still don't know what he's calling God.
Yeah, and you still haven't defined God. And you keep coming back to consciousness.
Okay, well, I believe in God, but then again, I believe that God can't be defined.
Well,
so
then we can't
it's like saying I don't believe in God, but there's no way I can prove it.
If you believe in God, but God can't be defined.
Then you don't even know what you believe in.
Yeah, you believe in a completely absurd, abstract concept.
I believe in something, but I don't know what it is.
That's silly. I mean,
that's like saying that there's an ultimate strategy. I believe in an ultimate strategy, but I don't know what it is.
But my point is, God is not a strategy, in that I know what a strategy is, but I don't know what a God is.
We can define strategy.
You know what a strategy is, but you don't know what an ultimate strategy is.
No. We can know what a strategy is.
Requires a goal, but
And ultimate requires that we define a goal.
But my point is, we know what strategies are. So
Okay, you
my
know what a
question
strategy is,
what is
but
a God?
you cannot define what an ultimate strategy is.
But I don't know
depend.
what a God is, whether it's ultimate or not. Can you tell me what a non-ultimate God would be?
I could say, that there is there's an explanation for this universe, or there's an explanation for parts of this universe that we understand, but there is no explanation for everything in this universe that we understand.
Right now,
whether there is an ultimate explanation or not, we can't say. But we can say there are small explanations that we can understand.
So what you're saying is because we don't know everything now, some things this justifies a God that you haven't defined?
Wait a minute, how can I talk to somebody about something that they can't even tell me what it is we're talking about? I don't understand how this conversation can even happen.
Well, there are certain subjects that when you talk about them, you have to start off with the, I don't know if there is an ultimate strategy. But I know that there are strategies. I know that there are strategies that work.
Yes.
But is there an ultimate strategy?
We don't know.
Some people believe there is. Some people believe there isn't.
But I can't even say that I've seen a non-ultimate God. I mean, I don't know what it is that you're calling God. And I'm assuming...
Okay, well, let's say God is strategy. God is the ultimate strategy.
Okay, so you define God as strategy.
Okay, let's say God is the ultimate strategy.
Okay.
Now, you believe in strategy.
Strategy for what?
For getting rich, or
God is the ultimate
strategy in some way, or
God is all strategy.
being able to get from this part of the planet to the other part of the planet. You have a strategy, and you use that strategy to get what you want.
Then I would assert,
that you use this. There are strategies out there.
Okay.
But is there an ultimate strategy? Is there an ultimate plan?
No, there's not. There's not an ultimate strategy, and your assertion that we can't know that is flatly wrong. Because if you're looking at an ultimate strategy as something that can get you to all goals, some goals are in direct conflict.
Correct.
And therefore you cannot have an ultimate strategy. Much the same way that you cannot have an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God. It's logically impossible.
I don't see I don't see why there can't be an ultimate strategy.
Okay, here's an example. Let's say that tomorrow some farmer hasn't gotten rain on his crops in like 6 months. He really needs it to rain on his crops. In that same town, there's a woman getting married. She's getting married outside. She really needs it to not rain outside. If there are goals that conflict, how can there be an ultimate strategy?
Well, one would have the ultimate strategy, and the other one would have a less than ultimate strategy.
The ultimate strategy for the bride is that it does not rain. The ultimate strategy for the farmer is that it does rain. How do you...
But one of them is misrepresenting an ultimate strategy.
Well, no, it would be really a problem if it rained on her wedding, and it would be really a problem if it doesn't rain on his field. They both have legitimate, concerns.
But neither one of them... Both of them have strategies, but neither one of them have ultimate strategies.
But you're asserting that there could be an ultimate strategy and that this ultimate strategy would necessarily be universal. So there must be, according to your assertion, an ultimate strategy that would work equally well for both of them, and I'm saying that there can't be.
No, I'm not saying that it could work for both of them, because then it would not be an ultimate strategy.
Okay.
And that therefore proves that there's only one God.
That's the point that I'm trying to make. The fact that you couldn't come up with a strategy that would work for both of them because there's a conflict.
And a compromise means it's not ultimate.
Contradiction.
Yeah.
Which makes this impossible. It's like square circle.
So it's impossible to have two gods, but it's not impossible to have two humans.
Whoa. First of all, if you're going to just say God is strategy, as Tracie tried to point out, why don't we just use the word strategy? Okay. Second of all, where do you get off saying that there can only be one God?
Because there can only be one ultimate strategy. You can't have two ultimate strategies. Because they could conflict.
I work as a project manager, and one of the things I realize is that there are sometimes equivalently efficient ways to achieve the same goal, and it's just a matter of which do you prefer. It doesn't matter. You can do it this way or that way. Why is that a problem, that there could be equally efficient means of achieving the same ultimate goal?
Because you're talking about human beings, and their strategies are flawed, and although both of them can succeed with their strategies, both of them can fail with their strategies. Neither one of them is an ultimate strategy. They are limited strategies.
Why couldn't there be an ultimate strategy that could be achieved by multiple equally efficient means?
Because then you would have a unmovable object and an unmovable force acting on that object.
There's the contradiction that made me say in the first place that your ultimate strategy thing is wrong. But can we just drop the crap about ultimate strategy? If all you believed in was strategy and the possibility of an ultimate strategy, or even the actual existence of an ultimate strategy, I'd have very little problem apart from the potential logical contradiction. What you said, though, was that you believed in God.
But he defines it as
and then you define God as strategy. Well, congratulations. I believe in God because
I was just trying to explain something that you could understand. I could call God a plan. I could call God the ultimate. There's no definition. Then you ask me to say, okay, simplify it. And the minute I simplify it, then you can attack me on saying that's not God.
No, I don't need you to make analogies. I didn't ask you to simplify. What I asked was, what was your definition of God and why do you believe in it? You chose to use analogies and you chose to talk about consciousness and you chose to make a bunch of statements.
I chose to say all-powerful and all-knowing.
Right.
And you said, well, explain something about that. And I said, well, okay, I'll try to explain that.
Ignoring the contradictions with all-powerful and all-knowing, you haven't said anything other than, I believe a God who's all-powerful and all-knowing exists. And my next question is, why do you believe that?
Because I see things unfold in time, in one direction, only one way.
And how does that necessitate a deity that is omnipotent and omniscient? How does that preclude natural processes of time flowing?
Which would also happen in a stream that's one.
Well, then, then what you're saying is what I believe God is.
Nature?
If you call it nature, then I'll agree that it's nature. But I could do the same thing with nature that you did with strategy with me. Because it doesn't encompass everything.
You could have resolved all this by simply saying up front that you're a pantheist.
No, because then you'd have two gods.
No.
You'd have one.
No.
You'd have one.
Pantheism is the position that God is nature, or God is everything, or God is pantheism is the universe.
And everything that it encompasses.
Or that, there is one thing behind everything.
Now you're a panentheist.
Not that it's everything, but there is something behind everything that's running the show.
Then you're a panentheist. You're saying that God is the universe plus one. God is the universe, and there's something more as well. That it is like the universe plus something that may or may not be imperceptible. But pantheism is belief that God is nature, God is the universe. Panentheism is that God is the universe, but there's something more to it.
But there's another problem, because you define God as omnipotent and omniscient, and I'll say that the universe is neither.
That's depends on how you define all-powerful and all-knowing.
I think what he's saying is it encompasses all power and all knowledge.
Yeah, in that case, you're back to the pantheism, and you've said nothing. I don't understand. Do you think that this God is conscious?
If you take everything as conscious, yes. If you say a rock is conscious,
so basically
which
you have
some religions say, then I would have to agree with that.
I think the question would then be, if you believe that God is more than just the universe, the question is then, why do you believe there's something more than the universe?
No, I believe that it is the explanation of, or it is the essence of how the universe, or let's say the equation or the science of how the universe unfolded, and it could only unfold one way.
But that would be the universe. I mean, that's what the universe does.
It would be the universe, but the universe, when you talk about, that's why I went to strategy, because it's like saying, there's strategy to chess, and you're saying, well, you're talking about the chess pieces. No, I'm not talking about the chess pieces. I'm talking about the strategy of chess.
We get that. What you're not getting is that you're using a God label, applying it to the universe, asserting that there's something extra, giving it characteristics, and not justifying one bit of it. You have a big, useless definition of knowledge of God, and when challenged on it, all you come back with is, it's natural, it's the universe.
Well, that's why I said religion was suspect, is because religion is the explanation of God.
I hadn't challenged your religion is suspect claim. What I challenged was your God is evident claim.
The God is evident. Okay, so I can't prove that there is a God.
But you said he's obvious.
I don't care if you can prove it.
Well, what I'm saying is that it's obvious that there's one thing, there's a basic thing that's running this universe, or a basic thing that allows, a basic thing that
Basically, you're done. Basically, you're done.
The universe does what it does,
when you say something is obvious, then it should be damned easy to explain that it's obvious.
No doubt. This mug is obvious.
It's obvious. When you say that you believe in something, it should be something that you can actually define, at least to some degree.
If you want to talk to other people about it, it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, Tracie tried to do this from the beginning, and I probably should have just listened to her and stopped the conversation then, because it was clear that this conversation could go nowhere, because, I mean, you might as well, and I promise, I'm not just trying to be mean here. You might as well have just said, I believe in something, I can't really define it, I'm not sure why. Because that's what you ended up doing. You didn't add anything new to a conversation. You didn't justify any of the assertions. You basically made this big emotional argument about how you sense that there's some plan for the universe, that something must be guiding all of this, and I'm just going to label that God. And when you do that, I'd much rather you do that than come in and tell me that your logic teacher defined God and then proved through logic that God existed, and then making analogies to strategy.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, to call all-knowing an attribute of God, and then when you're called on it, you simply say, well, it's all conscious knowledge contained within the universe. Yeah. Well, that's the universe. I mean, if God's all-knowing capacity comes from what things are known by things that can know things in the universe, you're talking about the universe.
Plus, I don't necessarily buy this argument from people that I definitely don't buy the shared unconsciousness argument, but this claim that the universe is conscious of itself because it contains conscious entities. Okay, if you want to say that we're part of the universe, then yes, in that sense it's true. We are part of the universe, we are conscious, and therefore some part of the universe is conscious of itself. But to extend that analogy, or to extend that situation to the universe has become conscious, I think is a little bit unrealistic. But
honestly, I don't think that's what he was saying. I think he was saying that the things that are conscious in the universe constitute God's consciousness.
Yes, I was making a side point.
Okay.
I was making a side point based on some other emails we got. But in the end, man, it's, when people ask me, what do you believe or what don't you believe and why? Granted, I don't always have the best answers ready. Sometimes people ask me about things that I haven't really thought about that much. And what usually happens in that case is that I then go off and think about it. So the next time I'm asked that, I at least have some explanation, some answer that I at least understand, hopefully well enough, to be able to convey it to somebody else.
But if you approach somebody with it and then have no idea what you want to talk about, that's what I don't get. It's one thing for someone to ask me what I believe about something I may not have thought about, and I might not have a good answer. But if I go to somebody and I say, I want to tell you about what I believe, and then I can't even define that, what am I approaching people for, to talk about something that I don't even understand myself about what I think?
For those people who think this was all unfair, I don't call out. People call in to this program. And if you call in, you better bring your A game, and you definitely better have an understanding, because I'm really, as much as I'd love to do more educational, hand-holding discussion, I'm really to the point where long calls that don't ever get to any point, start parading in circles, or make inane points, we're just done, and move on from there, because there are people out there that are actually legitimately interested in the subjects that we talk about, on both sides, on the theistic side
Satan.
and on the atheistic side. And I'd much rather have conversations that, with no regard to the two individuals in the conversation, benefit everybody else more. And I don't think that the last couple of calls have actually done that. So hopefully maybe we'll trump that with Hayden. How you doing?
Hayden?
Yes, Haven, actually.
Oh, sorry, they misspelled.
No, that's fine. I just kind of wanted to shed a little light, maybe on the last conversation.
Okay.
He was kind of trying to allude to the whole religious versus a scientific approach to God, maybe, or a philosophical approach to God. I just wanted to comment that you're talking about pretty much the same thing, just in different means.
Yeah, I agree.
Science search for God or the meaning of the universe would be to understand forces, to understand gravity, to understand cause and effect would be philosophy. The meaning of the universe as it pertains to man, and then the religious aspect, and this is, of course, just my opinion, would be more the mysticism of it and how we can relate to something that we can't even understand. And the way we would do that would be through, like, dreams, through metaphor, through poetry. So
I understand what he's doing. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
yeah, I just kind of wanted to maybe throw in that little tidbit, maybe bring in the aspect of God being the same thing, but being described in three different ways.
Right, what you're saying is science defines the mechanism, philosophy defines the meaning, and then religion is there for people who have a gap where they're just like, this is blowing my mind and I have to relate to it in some way.
Exactly, and that would define the religious.
It's not three different ways of talking about the same
Right,
thing.
it's three different areas completely.
It's three different things.
Yeah.
Three different what now?
It's three different things that you
Yeah,
described.
it is.
It's not three different views of the same thing.
No, it really isn't, because, I mean, when you talk about God in a religious aspect, like in the Bible or whatever, or if you were to go to the Quran or whatever, you have morality, you have universal truths being justice, temperance, you know, all the virtues that of course link into philosophy.
Oh, I think this is just a semantic issue, because there's sort of like, you know, science can tell me how this book is put together, and, you know, philosophy can talk about what the book might mean to me, and then religion is sort of how I relate to this book and what it means to me symbolically. And what you're kind of saying is that it's all about, you know, it's all different perspectives on the book. And what Matt is saying is it's very clearly defined, though, the parameters of those three different perspectives. And I think it's just a semantic difference.
Actually, no, it's more than that.
Okay.
The mysticism element that you talked about is nowhere near the same thing as the scientific element, with just a different name on it. In the case of religions dealing with the supernatural and mysticism, it's talking about something entirely different. The question of whether or not a God exists is one that I think actually can be addressed scientifically, and isn't dependent upon philosophical positions or mysticism.
Oh no, and they're not contingent.
Yeah,
they're not contingent on each other. They can't be contingent.
What he's
on
saying
each
is that's what people use religion for. He's not.
I know what people use religion for. Okay. I'm saying that what they use it for is nothing that's demonstrated as real, and is definitely not the same thing as what science is addressing on the issue. Earlier you said that it was three ways of looking at the same thing, and I'm saying it's not.
Right,
it is, in fact, three ways of looking at three different things. Science is looking at what's real. Philosophy is trying to figure out what, if anything, this might mean, but not anything to do with the real. And the mysticism aspect is talking about something completely different, something that cannot be demonstrated, that doesn't manifest, that isn't in any way real.
I beg to differ. Something that's not observable. I would say that you saying something that's not real, that's subjective, because
no, it's not. Reality is not subjective.
No, it clearly is. Otherwise, and I'm gonna.
No, it's not.
The reason why I'm kind of so into this right now is the whole the whole the experiments in Geneva with the proton accelerator thing gonna be fired off pretty soon. They're looking for things that they found in theory, but they can't observe them.
That doesn't have anything to do with reality being objective. That's the difference between.
It does, because you're saying that God. You're saying that God is not.
For Christ's sake, let me talk. It doesn't have anything to do with reality being subjective. The fact that we have theoretical particles, and now we've devised an experiment in order to try to find out if these things manifest in reality, that is science being applied. It is not at all what you're describing.
Well, the thing is, if we had a scientific experiment to demonstrate, to have God actually manifest, then of course we would, but we don't. We just have evidence. And evidence.
And for those
laws of nature, the evidence being universal truths in philosophy, evidence being miracles occurring, and I use those three things just to encompass, again, science, philosophy, and religion. You know what I mean? So we're looking at the evidence. We're not looking at God.
No. Are you saying that the people who believe it are considering this as evidence? Or, I mean, like, for example, I don't believe miracles occur, but I know that there are people who do, and I'm trying to, I guess in my mind, I would like to know whether you're asserting that the evidence for God consists of miracles, or whether you're asserting that the evidence for God who believe in God consists of things they consider miracles.
I'm saying the evidence of God would be that I'm actually sitting here, that I can,
You're done. You're done.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you lost my support right there. I thought I understood what he was saying. What I was thinking he was saying was more of, like, for example, the universe. Science can tell us about the mechanisms of the universe, and that philosophy can tell us what it might mean to us, and that there might be people who have an emotional experience that goes beyond what they can understand that they would call religious. But I don't.
In fact, he's arguing for a subjective reality where my mysticism is just as valid as your scientific exploration, and the evidence for God is that I'm actually sitting here. That's what you're doing. And
that's
by the way,
evidence that you're sitting there.
Yeah, you sitting there is evidence that you're sitting there. That's it. Nothing more. You construct a logically valid syllogism that begins with one of the premises is I'm sitting here, and ends with God exists. I'll buy you a steak dinner if I can't find a flaw in that. I might even buy you a house.
And there's the email address to send it to.
There's the email address at the bottom of your screen, tv@atheist-community.org.
Do we even have
Send in your syllogisms. Prove that God exists.
Is there time for David?
We have 1 minute left. David, you there?
Does that thing talk to him personally?
David?
Hello?
David, you there?
Oh, you're actually going to get me in the last?
No, we're not.
Sorry.
No, we're not.
I can't talk about it infinity in that short of time.
No, we only have 45 seconds.
Just do your Wonder Twins thing for me. That's what I really want to see.
Activate! I got to let you go, David. Thanks for the call. Call in earlier next week. We'll try and get to you. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back again next week. You can see more online at atheist-experience.com and atheist-community.org. There's a list of the crew who can maybe show themselves that the camera's working. There they are.
Hey.
Y'all be safe and call in and let us know next week why you believe what you believe.